Live from the Bay Area's news station, this is the KRON 4 Morning News.
Excuse me. So back in the 80s, I actually tried to play tennis, and I wasn't very good at it. So I picked up a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And my tennis game didn't get better, but my life changed because it was a breakthrough book that really changes the way you think about your brain. Well, the author of that book has come up with another book called The Inner Game of Stress, and it could change your life as well. Stick around. We're going to meet Timothy Galway and his co-author, John Horton, coming up on KRON 4 News Weekend. Welcome back, KRON 4 News Weekend. So back in the 70s, Timothy Galway and John Horton wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and they moved on to the inner game of golf, and then inner game of music, and inner game of skiing. And you know, my recollection was it was sort of like John Madden meets the Maharishi. You know, it's sort of a sports coaching, but it's also about your brain. Well, they have moved on, along with co-author Ed Hanslick, and written The Inner Game of Stress. Outsmart life's challenges and fulfill your potential. It's full of fascinating ideas, but the basic idea really hasn't changed, right, gentlemen? I mean, we're fighting, we're playing two games. We're playing against our opponents, and we're playing against ourselves, right?
So yes, most of the people go to play tennis to have a good time, and they end up getting stressed. And it's not the opponent that stresses them so much as the conversation in their head that they have about the game and how they try to control themselves with should and shouldn't and self-criticism, and then they want to attribute meaning to the game.
Right.
Like it means that I'm a man, or it means that I'm worthwhile. And all this internal conversation, whether you're on the court or whether you're in the corporate boardroom, actually triggers the stress system and causes you to tighten both physically and mentally and go into a reaction that's not creative, that doesn't trust yourself to respond to the reality of what's going on.
Right. So I think one of the problems is that I know that, but it doesn't mean I can fix it. So how do you address the fact that, I mean, there are these two selves you talk about in the book? You know, well, why don't you explain the two selves?
Well, it's interesting because because I'm a doctor, and from a medical point of view, obviously if one is stressed for long periods of time, we all know that opens a door to a lot of illness.
Yeah.
So to move from the stress system, you have to move to something else. So we coined the name a wisdom system. Mm-hmm. And these are our own inherent abilities to understand, to be clear, to love. Recently I had a woman whose husband died of a very rapidly moving cancer, young people, and she just did extraordinarily well. And at the end of it, 6 months later, she still hadn't sort of collapsed. Yeah. And I said, what is it? She said, love trumps adrenaline.
Okay.
Think about that. I mean,
yep.
That's the ability that we have to enjoy, say, a game of tennis or our lives. That ensures that things will work well. It's a very simple system.
Okay. What kind of tools can you use, though? I mean, it's one thing to say love. It's really hard. The problem is there are so many solutions verbally, but what are the steps you can take to actually deal with that inner, the two selves, the critical self and the helpful self, basically, I guess.
Well, yes, it's a huge self, too, is that huge reservoir of human potential that you don't tap into when you're listening to the self-one conversation telling you how to do things and how not to do things.
What is it, the CEO, I think you...
CEO is really who you are.
Yeah.
That's, you're given the life, and you have a chance to run it. And you also have a chance to make your own definitions of things.
For example?
Well, I was in Copenhagen doing work, and it was time to come home for Christmas. And I was nervous about coming home. And that sounded strange. It's Christmas time, you'll be with your family. And I used the redefinition tool. And I said, what's my definition of my children? And it came out they were problems to be solved. That's the way I was unconsciously thinking about them.
Right.
And I said, well, is there a definition that would be more conducive to my current commitments in my life? I said, yes, they're my only chance to experience love between parent and children. They're it.
Yeah.
That's my chance for love. And went home in a totally different attitude. Children weren't problems. The whole thing about toys and what to get and what not to get evaporated, and we had a wonderful time. And it shows how much our mental constructs make a difference in how much stress we feel.
Right. So inside the book, there are a number of tools that you can use to help sort of redefine your inside and your outside. The book is called The Inner Game of Stress: Outsmart Life's Challenges and Fulfill Your Potential. It's by Timothy Galway, along with Ed Henslick and John Horton. You gentlemen are welcome to come back anytime you like, because there's a lots more that we could be talking about in terms of our inner selves, our outer selves, and the many tools that are involved.
Thank you. Love to
Thanks
do
very
it.
much
Thank you
for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Oh, you're looking so relaxed, Isabel.
I thought you were going to invite them back because you were going to tell them there's a lot of stress around here.
Stress? Here? What station are you working at, Isabel? Come on.
What they say is so logical.
This is K relaxation.
Still ahead on Cronport News Weekend. All hands on deck as the U.S. Senate starts